Welcome back to Warrior Voices. This is episode 3 with Tina Talbot. If you have not watched episode 1 and 2, I would encourage you to do so. Um, During episode 3, we're going to talk about the aftermath of that critical night where Tina had to protect herself and her son, Philip. So thank you, Tina. Welcome back. We're going to dive in today about the aftermath. So in episode 2, we ended with you being arrested and your parents were coming to get Philip after you hadn't had no contact with them for about 7 years, 6.5 years or so. You are completely broken. You have been held captive by this man for days. And in those days, he had broken your wrist or your arm. He had beaten you with a wooden chair. He had thrown your son down and given him a concussion. And he held a gun on you all day, every day. And he sexually assaulted you. So let's start this episode off with, so you've been arrested and they take you to the police station, I'm guessing, and start questioning you. So take me from there.
Yeah, so I started answering their questions, but then, as they started to ask additional questions, they gave me the opportunity to Miranda, which I did because I thought, every answer I give can be used against me in the court of law, so I need to have some legal counsel. So they said, okay, fine, we're going to halt the interview from here. We're going to go ahead and, switch you to some jailware, basically. And then we're going to take you to McLaren before taking you to Oakland County because we want them to take a look at your injuries. So I changed my clothes, but in the meantime, right before I was going to change, the female detective that was in charge of the case, asked if she could take some pictures, more detailed pictures of like my injuries. So there's a lot of Waterford photographs that they took of like the extent of my injuries to like my arm and like the bruising on the face and that type of thing. And then I
Yeah,
went
the
ahead
whole
and
back of your legs, the whole back of your legs were purple, correct? From that wooden chair. I mean, it was just so bad. Okay. Sorry, go
it
ahead.
was and then they had me change my clothes, and then at that point they put me in a police vehicle and they took me to the back entrance or the emergency entrance of McLaren down in Pontiac. And they took me up and they put me in a bed, and they came in and a social worker came in and she was asking questions, and police officer was in there, and a doctor came in and the doctor said, okay, what's going on? Like, how do you feel? And I said, everything hurts. I said, I can't breathe. I said, I'm having real difficulty breathing. My chest hurts. And they said, okay, we're going to take you up and we're going to do a CT scan and we're going to take a look at what's going on. And I said, okay. So they took me up and, in the meantime, I'm chained to the bed, so they have to take the bed up there and they take me up there and they do the CT scan. And they bring me back down and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to the social worker again. And then all of a sudden, like everybody starts, crowding into the room. There's nurses, the doctor, everything. And they're like, we need to take you up to ICU. And I said, what do you mean? What's going on? And they're like, we don't even know how you're still alive at this point. You've got some life threatening injuries that need to be treated like right now, And so they took me up to like the 6th floor and they called me John or Jane Doe.
Yeah.
And the reason they did that is because they were afraid that like once Milo's family found out like what had happened, that they might come and do something to me. So they put me in there under Jane Doe and they started treating me. And what they told me had happened was um I had 2 partially collapsed lungs. I had multiple breaks in my ribs. I had a fractured sternum. I had a hole in my spleen. I had a broken arm. Um, I was like over 50% of my body was covered in bruises. And the doctor said to me, he said, I don't even know how you were able to, fire a gun. I said, well, I used two hands and I had to do something. He said, these are all very serious injuries. So what they had to do was they had to insert these tubes and they had to reinflate my lungs and heal them from inside. And they just
Mhm.
inserted it in my back. And then there was really nothing they could do for the ribs and stuff, and the spleen. Um, but the stuff that they were putting in there to heal the lungs was supposed to, kind of heal everything from within. And I was chained to a bed under guard for 5 days. I went in on Friday. I did not get released until Wednesday of the following week.
Wow.
Yeah, in the meantime,
That just speaks to how severe your injuries are, you know?
yeah, in the
Did you have
meantime,
surgery on your
like,
arm?
yeah, right before they took me to Oakland County, they had to do surgery on my arm. They asked me,
Mm.
they said, how do you want us to proceed with the surgery? They said, we can do a couple different things. We can like put pins in it, and they would stay in there permanently, or we can put a plate in there, a titanium plate. And I said, okay, what is going to give me the most mobility with my wrist, and they said the titanium plate. I said, okay. So that's what I opted for. So still chained to the bed. They put me under. They had an officer suit up in scrubs and go into the operating room along with the doctor and the nurses. And they proceeded to put a plate in my arm. When I came
Mm.
to, they changed my clothes back into the Oakland County prisoner stuff, and they took me by van to Oakland County, and that's where they dropped me off.
What was going through your mind at this time when you're leaving the hospital and you know you're headed to jail?
I was worried about like how Philip was doing and if my mom and dad knew what was going on with me and what everybody on the outside must think of what happened because I mean, not that they were being insensitive, but the police were in charge of the TV while I was, up there in the room, and they were mainly watching the news in my case. Yeah, so I mean, I had a lot of different things going through my mind, and then I'm going to Oakland County Jail, and I'm like, oh my God, what's that going to be like? You know,
Yeah.
and to go from basically being a prisoner for like a week, you know, to another prison situation, it was kind of scary.
Oh, yeah.
And I was also so distraught about what I had had to do, and I hadn't had any sleep. I couldn't sleep in the hospital. I was still in pain. I wasn't on any pain meds. They wouldn't give me anything, you know? I mean,
Wow.
once I got into Oakland County, I got 2 Tylenols for 2 days.
That is
That's it.
insane. That's insane. Oh my gosh. So you went into Oakland County and then you got a lawyer, right? So take us through like the justice system and how that works because I think our first reaction is this was self-defense. I mean, the guy's holding a gun on you, he's brutally beaten you, he has given his son a concussion. So we all assume like, hey, that's self-defense. Why is she in jail? Can you help clarify that for us?
My parents had hired an attorney that was a family attorney. He actually was very good at getting me out on bond because what was happening was I was still in the circuit court. I wasn't going through Oakland County courts yet. So he was very instrumental in getting me out on bond. But then what happened was they realized that this was kind of beyond his scope as far as like a murder trial.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they brought in another lawyer, Jerry Sabata, who was like the number 2 attorney in the state of Michigan for like criminal cases. They brought him in and he came to the prison and talked to me and said this is how we're going to do this. This is what we're going to, plead going into court. We got to get ready for trial, that type of thing. And oh my God. I don't even, I can't even put into words the emotions I was going through. It was just, I was so thankful to get out on bond, but I was so petrified of going to trial,
What
because that's
what
all
were
it
the initial
takes.
charges against you though?
Oh my gosh. First degree murder, weapons
Okay.
charges. I mean,
That
initially there were like 9 different charges. I mean, there was a ton of them. They thought there was credit card fraud going on, so I was being charged with that and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, credit card fraud? Like, what? I was kind of
yeah.
confused by all that. But as they went along, the charges got less and less and less. And, they dropped this one and, ruled out that one. And, so the big one was manslaughter in the first degree, and weapons
When you
charges.
got bonded out, did you go home or did you go to your parents? Where did you go when you were on
I
bond?
could not go home. So,
Okay.
and the reason being is because there was an ongoing case against me from CPS. So I was not allowed to be around Philip without supervision, and I was not allowed to stay at the same residence as Philip. So I ended up staying with a friend of mine. She, vouched for me, and I was on a tether. They put me on a tether, so I had to stay within Oakland County, and I had to be at her home. And I could go to my home, I could visit Philip, but I had to be back to her place and charge my tether every night by midnight.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're out on bond, you get a new attorney and you're charged. I mean, is there like I guess why did you even have to go through courts? Why was this not considered self-defense?
Because the prosecutor would not drop the charges. They were, yeah, they had their mind made up. They were going to go ahead and pursue it. They were going to take it to trial.
Is there any in Michigan, is there a self-defense law?
There is not.
That's okay.
No, especially when it comes to domestic violence. I don't know the law pertaining to like self-defense when it comes to a different type of case, but when it comes to a
Mm,
husband-wife situation and domestic violence, you cannot use self-defense as the reason for it. Reason being is because of that lovely case back years ago. I think it was like what, 70s, 80s, the burning bed
Farrah
defense.
Fawcett. Mhm.
Yeah, when she went up and she got off. And at that point, everybody was outraged that she got off for that because she was a victim of domestic violence. And they said, well, going forward, that's not going to happen. You
Mm,
can't do that. You can't use that as an excuse that you're a battered wife and so in a court of law, you can have an expert come in and say, yeah, she was a victim of domestic violence, but that same expert cannot tell you your mental state when you are a victim of domestic violence. They can't explain to you, battered wife syndrome or anything like that. So even though I had a 68-page review by an expert, um, who could come in and say, absolutely, she thought she was going to die that day, you know, she can't tell that to them in court. She can just say, yeah, he was abused.
wow. Wow. Well, you're hitting all
So the
kinds of areas.
likelihood, yeah.
Mm.
So the things that were going through my mind was, okay, do I have to go to trial? If I have to go to trial, how many people are going to be there? This is going to be huge. It's like there's going to be a lot of reporters there and newspapers. And are they going to be sympathetic? Are they going to paint me as a cold-blooded murderer? Are they going to understand, domestic violence and all the things that go along with it? Is the jury going to understand? Do I have to talk about the sexual abuse in front of my parents? Like how hard that would be, and it's just I wasn't sleeping through the night. I was talking to a therapist at Haven. I was dealing with so much. I was still crying every day, like nonstop. I was having anxiety going out in public because people recognize me. It was hard. I didn't see Philip. We'd never been separated a day in our life. Like,
Right.
even when I took a vacation, he went with me. It's like we were never separated. I was always there for him. He was always there for me, and that was incredibly hard.
Mm. Were you able to have any type of well, you were able to call him and visit with him when you were out on bond, right? But you couldn't stay with him.
Yes. What
So was
happened
that
was, CPS did like their internal investigation and stuff. And then the prosecutor's office got involved and they took it in front of Karen McDonald. Karen McDonald was amazing to me. She treated me like a human being. And she said, this woman is all this little boy has left. And this woman is who has been his primary caregiver and given him all the love and raised him. And she said, they need to be able to see each other, you know? And she says, so he needs to see her as often as possible, and even going into the prison system, she said he needs to go often, every week, every other week, as often as you can take them. They need to see each other, they need to lean
yeah,
on each other. So she was very instrumental in getting that through. And I was able to get all those charges dropped as far as like child endangerment and child neglect and all that dropped. And I was able to see Philip, with my parents. They were
right.
my supervisors.
Yeah. Well, good for
So
her for recognizing that. And it speaks a lot
yeah.
about her of looking for the child's best interests, and because that's what they're supposed to be doing. I mean, you were not only his mother, you were his educator, you were his support, you were all he knew. You were you were his stability. What was
Yeah.
that like seeing him for the first time uh, when you were allowed to?
Oh my God. For me, it was overwhelming. I was so afraid that he would not recognize me or be angry with me or resent me, and I wasn't sure how he was going to react to me. But be quite honest with you, the first time he saw me, he just hugged me and just
Mm.
smiled, and it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I bet that really was fulfilling for you, and validating that you're still a wonderful mother and you only did what you were forced to do and you protected your child. And I think any mother in that situation would have done the same thing. I would have done the same thing. So it's really scary to know. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I want to know, like, what do we tell these survivors that are out there that want to leave uh, when there's not a great support system in the justice system for them? Like, if filing a police report or a PPO, then they just go right back, especially ones that are married. You know. Um,
Yeah,
so you went to court, and so you ended up doing a plea deal. So what was
I did.
going through your mind? Like, was that when you agreed to do a plea deal, and you can tell us the details of it, but was that, I'm curious if that decision was made from emotion or if it was more of a, like a logical sense of this is what's going to get me back to my son. Because obviously you pled guilty to something that, in my opinion, I will say, you weren't guilty of. And from the sounds of it, you still stand by this was uh, your life or his life,
Mhm.
your and your son's life or his life. So tell us, talk to us about how you came to that decision of taking a plea deal and what was that plea deal that was offered to you?
Well, what had happened was, I sat down with my lawyer, and my lawyer said, they haven't offered us a plea deal yet. And I'm like, it's getting close. Like, it's February, and we're supposed to go to trial in March. And, he says, I feel fairly confident, though, that they are going to come through with a plea deal. He says, because they do not want to take this to trial. He goes, this is very widely publicized, high profile. You're going to get a lot of people that are, leaning one way. It's like they do not want to take this to trial. He says, what do you want to do if they come back with a plea deal? I said, I will take whatever will get me back to Philip the fastest. I said, so if you can guarantee me with this plea deal that I will get the least amount of time to get me back to him as fast as possible, then I will take it. So originally what happened was they brought him in and they offered him 5 years. And um Jerry came back and he said, I want you to know I told him 5 years was too long. I said, thank you for that, because that is too long. I said,
Yeah.
I don't want to be in 5 years. Half of my life is already gone and it was already a prison. So it's like, I do not want to be in there for 5 years. And he said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to him again. He says, I'm going to take pictures this time to reiterate just how bad it was. I'm going to take your report from Holly Rosen. I said, and I said, you might want to remind Jessica Cooper that had she pressed charges on Milo when he chased the neighbor around with the gun and taken his gun away from him, this may not have been an issue. But she did not pursue any like legal case against him. And he was out there wreaking havoc on everybody, including me and his son. I said, so remind her of that.
That was another prosecutor out of Oakland County.
That was, yes, that's the
Okay.
original prosecutor that prosecuted me. But she was also prosecutor in charge when he chased around the neighbor with the gun. She considered filing charges on him for chasing the
Yeah.
neighbor around with the gun and never did.
So yeah, because we talked about that in an earlier episode that he, chased, or he held a gun to your neighbor, but we never went any
Yeah.
further than that. So basically, there was an opportunity that they could have, arrested him on a gun charge and seen how
Yeah.
threatening he was, and it got dropped. So that's a great point. That yeah, had he gotten his gun taken away or had any type of consequence, then maybe it would have never escalated to this. We won't
Yeah.
know, but
Exactly.
so okay, so he took all this additional evidence back to the prosecutor.
Did. And they countered. He had me in the office and he said they countered 2 years, Cobb's agreement. You could get 0 to 24 months. He says, so if we can convince the judge that you should only have probation, then there's a good possibility that you will not see the walls of the prison. And I said, okay. I said, and thinking from a logic standpoint, 2 years I can deal with. 2 years of my life, that's nothing. You're looking at, if I'm convicted of this, if I'm found guilty in court, 15 years to life plus 2 additional years for the weapons charge. They were going to drop the weapons charge and just charge me with manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, and give me 0 to 24 months. So,
Okay. So that's the plea you took. So you pled guilty then to voluntary manslaughter, and
yeah.
the judge had the option to give you 0 to 24 months. And what did he or she What did the judge give you?
Miss Martha Anderson, the Honorable Judge Martha Anderson, um, she said that it was the worst case of domestic violence that she has ever listened to. And just because the parents or, the family claims to not know that it happened does not mean that it didn't happen, because clearly it did. She said, but when you look at the bottom line, I took a life, and because I took a life, I had to sacrifice. And
Mm,
clearly I had not sacrificed enough, so she was sending me to prison. And she sent me to prison for 20 months.
wow. Well, shame on her because not only did that affect you and your son and your family, it also tells all other survivors that come after you. You know what I mean? It sends them a message and not a message of support. And that just really, I'm sorry, pisses me off.
Yeah,
I get that there had to be, consequences, but like you said, you've already suffered 20 years of consequences and you've been living in fear of your life for a better part of that 20 years and trying to protect your son's life for the better, for his entire life. But in the bigger picture, I'm happy for you that it was 20 months, not a life, life in prison. Um, and so I think, yeah, again, anyone would have taken that deal, but it's permanently on your record, right?
it
So,
is.
so once you've taken this plea deal, then you get sent to prison in somewhere in Michigan, right?
Yes, immediately. Immediately. You don't even have the opportunity to say goodbye to anybody. Basically, the officers come into the courtroom, they put the cuffs on you, and they take you out. And they took me downstairs, they put me in a holding cell, they took all my clothing, they changed me to what I was going to be wearing at the prison, and I had to sit in Oakland County Jail for another 2 weeks. I could not leave immediately and go to the Ypsilanti prison because I had other court cases. Like, I had to wrap up the family one. I had a probate one that was going on with the estate because his mother was fighting me for the house and for all the money and the life insurance that I supposedly, had on him, which I didn't have any on him. He had it on me. So, yeah, it was just a hot mess.
So speaking of his family, I know at sentencing, they have like the victim statement. And although I see you as being the victim in this, I do want to say it's sad that anyone had to lose their life. That's just devastating. I'm not trying to write it off as it's not important. You know what I mean? It's sad that it ended with anyone losing their life. And so I imagine this was emotional for his family, and I certainly don't want to disrespect them or dismiss any of their emotions or feelings. And from what I gathered, neither do you. You've never spoken poorly about them or anything. So, can you tell us what their response was, or did they get up there and speak at your sentencing?
They
Okay,
did. They did. They accused me of fabricating all of it, of pretty much, inflicting my own injuries. He was never abusive. Um, their son was perfect son and brother, and he was the one that was the primary caregiver and took care of Philip and took care of the household and did everything, and he was assassinated by me, and you know and um yeah, I've never spoken publicly about his family. They have every right to grieve their son. I understand that, but they also knew what he was. They had had their own issues with him. So they knew. And for them to openly lie like that and accuse me of making everything up when they knew what he was, that's what bothers me.
sure. Yeah. And I
you
know through
know.
grief, a lot of people look to blame other people, and maybe that was part of their grief. Did you guys have any interaction with them at that time? Like when this happened? I know you were isolated from your family, but did you guys um, have any participation with his family?
No, he and his family did not get along. So I actually had more of a relationship with his mother than he did himself. Every time his mother came to visit, he would forcibly remove her from the house. Like he would kick her out. And every vacation we ever went with her when he was involved in the vacation, her vacation ended early, because they would get in a fight and he would literally kick her out of the hotel. So I would go on vacations with Philip and we would go down and spend them with her. And everything was fine. We never had an issue with her and me and, Philip and stuff. It was all good. But as soon
Yeah.
as all this happened, it was like, um, yeah, so they were speaking, but not really. Like he didn't even have a phone number for her. And he never had a address for her. He was not allowed to have that. I mean, it was a weird dynamic. It was a very strange, odd dynamic. Anytime they wanted to talk to each other, it was via email.
So she took the stand of she was putting blame on you, and she made that known to the court, but which is sad, but here nor there. I'm sorry that they didn't stand up for the truth, and as devastating as it was, that maybe they just were in a place where they couldn't accept that he was that kind of person. But clearly, you had the medical records and everything else to go with it. It wasn't just your word, you know. Um, you had a lot of evidence to prove,
Yeah.
everything that you had gone through. So then you get sent to Ypsilanti to spend the next 20 months at. Were you able to have any kind of contact with Philip during that time?
Yeah, I called them pretty much every day. I called my mom. They had to put money on the phone so I could call, and I try to be the first one down there so I can make my phone call. Because, there's
Right.
literally only 4 phones in the entire place. So
Wow.
and you only get, like, a 10-minute phone call, So I had to run down there and, talk to him. Mom would put me on speakerphone so I could talk to him. And then on Sundays, they would come visit me. That was up until the March before of my release because COVID was in full and they cut off all visits. So I didn't
Oh
see him
my
from
goodness.
March through November. And that was a very rough 6 months for me because I went in front of the parole board. So I was waiting to get their answer. And then when I did get their answer, Milo's mother filed an appeal. So it withdrew my parole. And then I couldn't see Philip on top of it. I didn't know if I was going to be getting out, when I was going to see Philip next. I mean, I was a mess. I was a mess. I was crying like every
Yeah,
day.
I can't imagine. It was like your life is still being controlled. Um, yeah, and I think that's important to say. This was all during COVID, and
Yeah.
so you didn't get to see Philip, and Philip didn't get to see his mother, and that is so sad. This is all. He's a special needs child, and I know being autistic, like being on a schedule is so important, and and everything had just kind of erupted for him, and his sole person um, wasn't around. And so it's devastating that you both had to go through that. That's especially, let's just say you guys did. And it's like, man, the abuse just never stops. Even in the aftermath, you're still getting, to me, abused by the system. You're getting abused by his family. And, I am so sorry that um, you have had to go
Yeah.
through all of this when all you did was want to protect your little boy and save your life. you know? So it's 20 months, you got approved. She appealed it. Apparently that didn't go through because you were able to be released. Let's talk about that day that you were released. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. I always, everybody would always ask me, they're like, why aren't you more excited? You're going to be walking out the doors. And I said, I will not be excited until I walk out those doors, literally walk out those doors and see my boy. I said, then
Oh,
I will believe it. I said, so many things have happened. So many things have gone down. It's like, I don't trust his family to not try something. And the crazy thing is, I found out later that day that they did file an emergency appeal to stop my release on that day, but they thought I was going to be released later in the day. And because of all the media and everything that was there, they released me early. They released me at like 5:30 in the morning versus 8:30 when they normally release the prisoners. So the appeal didn't make it there in time because I was already released. It was amazing to see everybody out there and everybody cheering, and I was just so emotional because I was walking out those doors and going home, and Philip was there, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen him in 6.5 months." I was so excited, and just to
oh,
see my mom and to hug everybody and then the media was all there, and that was kind of crazy, and all the
yeah,
police, there was a police there.
very
Hi.
overwhelming, I'm sure. And they
Yeah.
probably did it to protect you too, to,
Yeah.
make sure you were safe when you were coming out. Was there any type of threats for you? Because I imagine, there was a split reaction, right? I'm sure you got a lot of support. In fact, you got thousands of people to sign a petition, right, for you and throughout
Yeah.
this in support of you. But there are going to be those people that don't support. And were you ever in fear of your life from that or no?
No, I wasn't.
Good.
I mean, there were other people that were more fearful of it than I was, just because I was like, I've been through so much. It's like, if they're going to take me out this way, but when I was having a hearing one day, all of a sudden, all these officers like rushed in and they're like, we're going to escort you from the courtroom. And I'm like, what is going on? Well, his family had made some threats that they were going to hurt me. Um, and they had said some stuff against the prosecutor too. And because of that, they were like escorting me from the building and nobody was allowed to like leave the courtroom. Like the family wasn't even allowed in there. They escorted
Wow.
them from the property. And so, yeah, they had to escort us down to the parking lot and asked us to leave and go a certain way because the family was on the other side. So, that was kind of scary. And then, for a while there, it's like the police and like my parole agent and stuff, they were not trusting that she wouldn't try something. So, they were like, watch your back, keep a low profile, that type of thing. Keep your eyes
Uh,
open, for anybody stalking your house or anything like that. Because, they tried to appeal with the district, circuit, state courts. They tried 20 different appeals and they were cut off each
all done.
time.
Gosh.
So,
Well,
uh,
are they've moved on now? Are they, not an issue anymore
now,
that you know of or no?
for
So you're on
now,
parole. I want to ask you a couple of questions. Like looking back now, tell me like your overall experience of being in prison because I'm sure that's something you never thought you'd ever experience in your entire life. And you're with all these
yeah.
women. Like, did they believe you in prison? Did you have any friends in prison? Did you stick to yourself mostly? Like, how did you pass that 20 months?
I had some friends, but you had to be careful about who you like hung out with because like the officers used to tell me, you are who you hang out with and you'll earn a reputation in there. So my focus was when I got in there keep my head down low, and keep my eyes on the prize, which to me, my prize was getting out and seeing Philip again. So I had to be very low profile, stay out of trouble, do what I was told, and get out, and that's exactly what I did. I was very focused. I spent a lot of time, working. I worked the warehouse in there. So that kept me busy. That made time go faster. I drew a lot. I listened to a lot of music. I sent emails out to my family and my friends and stuff. And I took my classes. I had to get those done and out of the way so that I could be released. And
What kind of classes
that,
did you have to take?
well, I did one on like trauma. I did one on coping mechanisms, which is like alcohol, drugs, and substance abuse. Which I was kind of surprised they gave me that one at first, but now I'm not. Now that I have gone through the class, I understand why they do it, because a lot of people use those type of substances as a coping mechanism. Whereas me, I never had an issue with that um during it, but I can see where people afterwards, might be into that. That's how they deal with the pain. And I can see that now. But at the time I was like, why am I taking this?
Yeah.
Um there were a couple different courses I had to take, and all of them were pretty much about like, abuse and trauma and that type of thing, which all were actually very good classes.
Mhm.
I didn't have a problem going through them and getting them done. They kind of fast tracked me too, which was kind of amazing. Because normally
Yeah.
you come in there and you have to take these classes and they put you on a waiting list. But because I was in there for such a short period of time, plus I was so high profile that they wanted to get me in and get me out, that they kind of fast tracked all my classes. And like, the first week I was in there, they're like, boom, 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 you got like 3 classes.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was crazy. The officers, they were overall they were nice. At first, not so much, because, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of these people are repeat offenders. A lot of these people learn nothing, and they come back and they do the same thing over and over again. They kind of look down at you. Um but you kind of gain their respect by how you respond to them.
Yeah.
And, if an officer called me out for something, I'm going to own up to it. Yeah, I did it. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I mean, I'm not a frequent flyer in prison. I don't come here. I never plan on coming here again. And
Yeah.
then the more curious they got about my case, the more they read about it. And then there was a lot of them, and I won't give names or anything like that. I don't want to be specific, but there's a lot of them that are like, we're really sorry, that this happened to you, and you shouldn't be in here. And you're not the type of person that should be in here, but the one officer told me, which was really a compliment. She says, I usually tell people, I don't want to see you back here. She goes, I know when I tell you I'm not going to see you back here, that I'm not. I said, thank you. That's
Aw.
the ultimate compliment. I said, because you won't.
That had to been so validating to you that to have like the guards and stuff like that. Well, first of all, take the initiative to understand your case before they judge, and to give you that kind of empathy. That was probably the first time you've received any type of empathy like that, in validation. That for them
Yeah.
to say you don't belong in here, you're not that kind of person. It's crazy how something like that, someone just saying that can really save someone like you that really just needed to hear that. And I heard on your other podcast, that Karen McDonald said something to you to me that was very just amazing. Again, it said a lot about her. Do you want to share that with us? It was something about not being a criminal. Does that ring a
Yeah. She
bell?
said that she looked at my case and she said that, what I had done, that I was not a criminal, that I was just a mother who was taking care of her child. And my case was going to be her last case. because she was going to step down and she was going to run for Oakland County prosecutor because she wanted to be the voice of all the women that had gone through what I had gone through and all the children,
Yeah. So she
that
was
had
an
been
Oakland
through what.
County prosecutor at the time,
No, she
right?
wasn't. She was my judge. She was my judge
Oh,
in family court. Yeah.
oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good for
She
her.
actually did an
And
interview for Channel 7 that said it was because of my case that she stepped down and was leaving a job that she loved because she thought it was an injustice that I was being charged and sent to prison for what had happened. And she
wow.
was going to fight for us going forward. So, and she
Well,
won,
good
and I
for
was so
her.
happy.
Yeah. I, I support, I'm an advocate for Haven and I go to their gala every year and she's there. And, she's there to protect survivors and to support them. And so when I heard you say that, I was just like, that just makes me, have so much even more respect for her. And I just want to hug her because for someone in her position now as like the Oakland County prosecutor to say that to somebody is just profound because she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to,
Yeah.
you know? And so I love you, Karen McDonald. If you ever hear that, I think that's amazing that you would say that to somebody. So what was it
My
like? What is
mom,
it
my
like
mom,
being
my mom is so funny. She says, I hate to admit this, and she says I'll probably never admit it to anybody. She goes, but Karen McDonald is the only Democrat I've ever voted for.
That's
I said,
awesome.
Mom,
That's
keep that
great.
under wraps. Don't say a thing. She goes, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but I just love you so much. And she was so good to
yeah.
you.
Well, I love the fact that it wasn't even a political thing. It was a human thing that she
Right.
said to you, and I think that that's amazing. So, let me ask you this: what is it like been like to when you got out of prison and integrate back into society? You're back in your home, correct? So
I am.
somehow that stayed afloat while you were in prison for 2 years. Um, so what has it been like in society, like or getting a job? Like, talk us through all of those transitions.
Oh my gosh, it was kind of rough. I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of different because I came out and people were angrier, because of COVID, and so people had been locked up for a long time. And when I got out, people were like impatient and you know angry, and they a lot of road rage going on and stuff. And me, I just wanted quiet because I don't care what anybody tells you. Prison is a very loud place. Like they're always on speakers. There's always fights. There's always yelling. There's always hollering going on. It's very loud. And it's like, I just wanted peace and I wanted quiet. Um, it was kind of rough for me at first because I was feeling a great deal of anxiety. There was a lot of like people reaching out, a lot of, news agencies and stuff. And everywhere I went, people were like, pointing fingers. And, there were days where it's like I knew my anxiety was too high to even leave the car. So I'd be like, I can't go in. Like, I can't go in. Too many people recognize me. I can't go in, you know? But, and plus I was still going through the process of trying to get Philip back. I still had to like go through that because my parents had guardianship, and
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah. So I was still
How
going through
long did
that.
that take?
I got him back in March after my release.
So a couple
Yeah.
months?
So I was
Mm,
released in November and I got him back in March,
okay.
but I had to
So
go through all that. I did not have a job. I wasn't sure when I was going to have a job. I actually worked for a friend of mine who's a plumber and he was teaching me apprentice work. So I was, cutting copper pipe and learning how to, install things. And I loved it. It was very hands on, but it was, he knew I needed money to support, the house and everything. Thankfully, I had liquidated most of my 401k prior to anything happening. And I had auto deduct for my house and my utilities and everything. So I was able to get right back into my house, and but yeah, I found a job. A friend of mine that I went to school with, worked for a company, and he said, "Listen, this would really be a great thing if you could take on this girl. She's been through some really bad stuff, and this would really help her out." So I went through multiple interviews, and I got hired, and I've been with them ever since. It'll be 5 years this March, and I'm part of their Elevate program. It is second chances for
Oh,
incarcerated individuals, and they train
wow.
them and they put them to work when they get out.
Good for
So,
you.
and that's
That
a
is,
pilot program that was just started right before I hired in. So
yeah,
I'm like one of the veterans.
good for you. And that's and amazing that you got that opportunity. It's like finally something, do you know what I mean, happens for you in the good. And that's incredible. That had to been so well, I don't even know. I can't even say I don't know. It just had to been amazing that finally something was going right. You're out, but to get a job because it would be hard because it's gonna be on your record, right?
Right.
The voluntary
Exactly.
manslaughter is on your record, which is a felony. So it's even though because now you're off parole, you've been off parole for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And what is it like today, being in society? Do you feel welcome? Do you feel like it's in the past? Like, are you still in fear of people's opinions, or are you like kind of take us from today, where you're at today?
Today, well, I'm still in the process of, self healing and, getting through my trauma. My job is
Hmm.
going really well. I've actually been a spokesperson for their program and gone out and spoken about my case and, you know, my job taking me on despite, everything that had happened. Um, I'm getting out there and talking about it as much as possible because for me, talking about it is healing. It is being able to talk about it and deal with it without reliving it, and if that makes sense. I mean, I can
Hmm.
honestly talk about it now, and yes, there's always gonna be parts that really get to me, but I can honestly talk about it now, and it's almost like a third person. It's like sitting there watching something play out and you're narrating it. It's
Yeah.
not I'm not emotionally invested in it to a point now where it's like I can't get through it. I mean, when I was going through therapy, I'd no sooner start with and then and I'd cry. Like I couldn't get a word out of like what had happened. Not a word. Now at least I'm at a place where it's like I can talk about it and yes, there are points where it's like it is going to affect me some,
Hmm.
but I can talk about it and it doesn't affect me like it did, you know.
That just
And
shows that's a huge sign of the growth that you've had in your healing process. So, and that's why I run the Trauma Survivor Ambassador Program, is because I too believe that the best thing you can do for your healing is to start talking about it. And
yeah,
that releases any type of shame, it releases the guilt, it releases any of that. And the more you talk about it and share it with other people, you start to feel a sense of self-worth. And like turning your pain into purpose is such a huge achievement.
yes
And,
it
you
is.
know, but it's very rare for people, for survivors to want to talk about their story because either they're shamed by other people into silence, or they're afraid of consequences of them sharing their story. And so that's why I started this program, is to give them that safe space to do that. And I'm glad that you're going to come aboard and be an ambassador and help some of these other women that are wanting to share their story. And it's like, showing them there is a way to do that. And I know it still gets emotional. I think it always will, but it's almost like you have to detach from the story to be
Yeah.
able to get through it. But I'm sure there's times when it's quiet that you still struggle, with everything that you've gone through. Your nervous system, I'm sure is still like, is it safe out there or
Mhm.
no? Like it takes a lot of years for your nervous system
It
to really
does.
feel safe, and that shows up with like anxiety, um, just abrupt emotions, that whole roller coaster. So what else are you doing to help your healing process and for Philip and his healing process?
Mm. Well, Philip, I thought, I don't know what I was thinking. I was hoping that Philip had kind of been, because of his disability, kind of unscathed through all this, that maybe he didn't pick up on a lot of things, but I'm finding that as time goes on and we're having some issues with his behavior and things that are happening, that it it can be directly linked to the stuff that he saw or that he experienced. And I'm just trying to make him aware that he's okay, that we're okay, that mama's here to protect him and take care of him, that nothing's gonna hurt him, and just kind of talk him down. He doesn't like raised voices. He doesn't like yelling. He doesn't like police officers. He doesn't like men that resemble his dad. There's certain things that kind of trigger him. Me, I have anxiety levels that are off the chart. Like, I'm anxious all the time. And I try not to be. I mean, I try to, like, paint and draw and listen to music and do meditation and exercise and everything I could possibly do to alleviate it. But I always feel like my body's on edge, like just waiting for something. It's like I'll wake up some days and I'm like, why am I so anxious today? Like, what's going to happen? It's like, it's constantly like that.
That's your
Every
nervous
small
system.
becomes big.
Yeah, that is definitely your nervous system. It's been trained,
Yeah.
right? That you never know when the next bad thing's going to happen. So it's like you know you are not consciously, but subconsciously, you're looking for the danger, like what's going to happen next, or the fact that okay, I've gotten I've gotten through all of this. I've gotten through my parole. I'm in my home. Philip's doing good. I'm doing good. We're safe. It's too good to be true. With everything that I've gone through and everything that has happened, so then you start to have those doubts. Are
Yeah.
you still participating in like any type of therapy, support group, anything like that to help you get through this?
Yes,
Good.
I am. And I'm not embarrassed to say I will probably be in therapy until the day I pass away.
Yeah.
Some form of therapy. But to
I think
me,
everybody needs therapy. Everyone needs a coach.
I believe that. I seriously do, because there are times where it's like they don't even say anything. It's just me talking it through, and then I come to my own conclusions. I'm like, wait a
Yeah.
second. It's just it's pretty amazing. And just having that person to, like, you know, listen to you. Because
Yeah.
I live in a house with a nonverbal child. I could talk all day long, and you think he's gonna listen to me? If he
Yeah.
does, he can't
Yeah.
tell me he is.
You can't
So
hold a
it's like I
conversation.
don't have anybody to have a conversation with. So it's like I welcome therapy, and I think it's invaluable.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
please take advantage of it. I never used to believe that. There's a lot of things I never used to believe in, and I do now. There's a lot of things that I thought worked, and I realize now don't work. The legal
Like what?
system, the justice system, I don't agree with, half of what goes on in it. But back in the day, I used to think, oh, yeah, it all works. It works like it should. Only bad people go to prison.
Mm, yeah.
No, it's a fine line.
So a lot of lessons learned throughout this process. So
Yes.
do you have any goals like going forward as far as where you see yourself or even like the justice system? W- Anything with your
You know what? I'm super ambitious. So, I got a lot of things that I want to get done. I want to continue to talk about this. I'm going down in February. I'm going to be speaking for my employer. They're a huge sponsor of a women's shelter down there. They're celebrating their 25th. So I'm going to go down there and I'm going to talk to them and we're going to raise awareness and get that going. So I want to work out on a book. I want to get that out there. I want to do more speaking engagements. I want to possibly maybe think about setting up like a YouTube account where I get on there and talk about, abuse and, coping and healing and, that type of thing. I want people that feel hopeless to feel hopeful. If that makes sense, because there's so much of my relationship where I felt absolutely hopeless. Like I I had no one, and I don't want anybody to feel that way because that is the worst feeling in the world to feel like all hope is lost, you know?
right?
And I just want people to realize that, you can get through this. It's not easy. And there are going to be days where it's like you just want to bury your head in the sand. But you know what? There's a light at the end of every tunnel. And it's like, and if you could just see that, you'll get through it because people are stronger than what they give themselves credit for. There are people that told me I could never go to prison like you did. And I'm like, what choice do you have? What choice do you have? When given no choice, you'll do what you have to do to get through it, you know?
What is your driving motivation to not live at the effect of everything that's gone on? Because rightfully so, like you went through 25 years of abuse and then going in for this manslaughter and gone to prison and you have a special needs child. Like, what keeps you from burying your head in the sand and playing that victim role that you very well could? And I think anyone and everyone would understand that, but you don't. Like, you are so brave and you're like a freaking warrior and you're out here talking about your story, you're helping other prisoners, you're doing literally everything you can to prevent this from happening to anybody else. And that's another huge weight to carry and responsibility, but how in the hell are you doing that with everything that you've gone through?
One, Philip's a big motivator. He motivates me to keep going, but two,
He's
I
agreeing with
feel like
you. I hear him. He's
he
like,
sure is.
yeah, I
You
agree.
hear him in your eyes like, you go, mom.
I
Um,
love it.
I was always a a good person, an upbeat person, an uplifting person, a person who helped people. And I became something different when I got involved with Milo, and I didn't want what happened to, and I know this is probably going to sound bad, but I didn't want him to win. And by me becoming that person and withdrawing and being somebody other than what I was prior to him, he would have won. He would have won because that's what he always wanted. He wanted me to be what he shaped me into being. And that is not who I am, you
I
know?
love that so much. And you knew, like, that's what I talk to my clients about. That's what I talk to my friends about is like not giving your power away. And if you were to do that to yourself and everything that he's trained you to do and trained you, be who he wanted you to be, then you're still giving your abuser power. And it's not
Yes.
about winning, but it's about reclaiming your power. It's about reclaiming your life. Like you get one life and you can live it the way you want to. Like here's my shirt in the Survivor collection. It says, break the rules that hurt you, live the life that, what does it say, that empowers you. And it's like, that's kind of, it says break the rules that hurt you. Like your rules that you live by, like you can't have any friends, you have to be home,
Yeah.
you can't wear certain clothes, you have to, these are all rules that your system learns to live by. So how are you breaking those rules? Because you have to break what has been taught to you for 20 some years. They are breakable. And girl, everyone knows I like to break rules, but break the ones that hurt you first. You know what I mean?
Right.
Break the one. So what are some of
Exactly.
those rules that he had you live under, that you've had to break to free yourself and to empower yourself to live this life that you deserve?
Oh my gosh. Well, his rules were so crazy, that it would go so far as to I had to open the right side of the refrigerator rather than the left. Now I just open any old side I want to, and I'm like, ha, and it's kind of a secret victory. I had to turn on the faucet a certain way, and now I turn it on whatever way I want to. I had to Stairmaster 3 times a day. I haven't touched that Stairmaster since I got out. I had to walk
Yeah.
6 miles a day. I haven't walked like that long of a distance. I mean, I'll do my 10,000 steps around the house doing housework. My house used to be a disaster, because I didn't have time to clean it. And he made a mess of it. My house now, like you could eat off the floor, I mean, it's just the exact polar opposite of everything that he had me doing or he, trained me to do. I'm doing the polar opposite. You know,
Yeah. Good for
I
you.
do what I want to.
You've earned it. Tina, you have definitely earned it. You have been a prisoner not for 20 months. You've been a prisoner for 25 plus years. And
Yeah,
good for you for seeing that you can take your power back no matter how much he took from you and how much he stole from you, that you can now say, I am not going to give him another second of my life because he stole so many moments and precious things from me already. And I think
yeah,
that's a huge message to end this on. Is telling survivors that you can leave an abusive relationship before it gets to this point, and that by living um, a life that you're meant to live, first of all, is the best revenge. It's sometimes the only way you're going to get your own justice. And like
yes,
you got no justice, you've gotten no justice for all the abuse you've lived through. But your justice now is coming in the form of healing and freedom to choose which freaking way you want to open the refrigerator door. Those are huge wins when it comes to feeling like like you get some sort of justice. But letting go, because I know so many people still, they allow their abusers, even if they are out of the relationship, continue to abuse them by living by those rules and those beliefs that were ingrained in them. And it's like they just don't even realize, like, oh, I have this opportunity. I can break those rules. They don't even know that they can do that because
yeah,
they were like you. They're broken and they just are so lost. They don't know who to be. You know. Um, so thank you again. I know this has been a long day for you. It's been a very emotional, a lot of ups and downs. But I really hope that this is the beginning of a relationship for you and I. And, any way that I can help you, help survivors, and I know you're already helping me help survivors, girl, I'm there for you. I will do whatever I can. I 100% believe in you to my core. And I am so profoundly happy to see that you are given this second chance because you and Philip absolutely deserve it. And I can be that girl, like even if therapy, counseling, whatever you're doing, just need someone to pick up and have someone communicate with you, that call me. Like I want, definitely want to be there for you and be a friend to you and to be a support to you because I think your healing is going to be a lifelong journey. this was a life altering event, and you don't rush it. Take it day by day. And doing things like
Yeah.
this is definitely going to help you on your healing journey. I want to thank my Thrive Tribe for hanging in there for all 3 episodes. I know this has been an emotional journey for you as well. For any survivors that are out there listening, I hope that Tina's story brings you
Mm.
inspiration and motivation to protect yourself before it's too late. And to get the help that you need. And I will put in the description of each episode all sorts of resources like Haven and the domestic hotline. Please reach out to your family. And even if you're not ready to leave right now, start to come up with a plan. Um, getting copies of your driver's license, your social security card, and having someone that you trust hold on to that information. Because often, when it does come time to leave an abusive relationship like this, there is no time to plan. It's you're leaving with the clothes off your back. So even if you're not ready yet, it will empower you to have a bag packed. There are places out there that will help you come up with this safety plan. Again, I'm always available too, if you want to reach out to someone like me, and I can connect you with some of those
Mm.
resources and help guide you to them. But thank you again for listening. I really hope that you subscribe to this channel, you like and share. Please share about this 3-part series that Tina has so bravely and courageously shared with us, because it will save lives. It will motivate people to get out of a situation when the red flags start to appear before they are completely broken and before they are completely um, mind fucked. There is just no better word. It's a disgusting thing, but it happens when you are just stuck in a relationship and having these things told to you over and over again. There is hope out there. And I think that's what Tina's message she is wanting to get across. And we're both here for you. So thank you again. And we hope to see you tune in to another episode soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye bye.